All right, so returning to our digital painting, my little caricature of this strange dog, deer, fox thing. The way you set it up is quite important, so it won't stress you out later. And the basic way is to always have a blank white layer that's locked on the bottom, so you can't accidentally paint on it. That's what the locking is about. On the very top, I have my reference image with the background erased because we're not doing a background for this one. And I have that locked, so I can't accidentally paint on that, right? Because at the end, I'll just turn that reference off and I'll be left with my painting. The goal of this digital painting project is that you make all of the pixels yourself. So we are not compositing any elements. Though it is okay to do things like sketch on top of and then move over. And be kind of smart about how you use your reference. So what I showed in the last video is I did a basic shape sketch, and then I enlarged it, and then I used warp to kind of caricature it. I liked what Eileen's artist said about thinking of it as a balloon, stretching it in certain places. But as long as you have the fundamental structures aligned, even for a person's portrait, the likeness should be retained. Animals are more forgiving. And then I started filling in with local color. But let me show you what else you can do with the basic shapes and the sketch. Notice it's really sketchy. I probably don't want his face looking just straight ahead. So I might actually want to adapt that sketch a little bit and have his head more at a 3/4 angle. I could probably even find more reference for that if I needed. But I'm doing a caricature, so I'm going to kind of wing it. And I want it to look like kind of a fuzzy, weirdly proportioned little deer, juvenile deer. Because I might use it as a Christmas card, something like that. So there we go. You can always adjust your basic shapes. Okay, now I can lock that layer just so I don't accidentally paint on it. And now I'm doing a local color layer with my paintbrush. So the paintbrush is pretty much what we're going to stay on throughout this project. But we're going to learn how to modify it. So first I just want you to know its basic principles. So I'm going to go up to the brush settings up here, and I'm choosing the brush right in the middle of that top row. I know these don't seem that different, but the first two mean that it's not pressure sensitive. So it's just like using a mouse. And that's not very helpful. We want it to be pressure sensitive. So the second two, they're pressure sensitive to size. So the lighter you press, the thinner it is. And then you can press harder. That's what I tend to like to use at the beginning, right? And then the final two are pressure sensitive to opacity. So the lighter you press, the lighter it is. The harder you press, the more opaque. And that's good for finishing off. So let's just use this middle one. I'm going to use 100% hardness. The difference between these two is one is 0% hardness, so a very soft edge. And one is 100% hardness, a very crisp edge. So I like to start with just something really bold. It's like you're painting with one of those foam brushes and you're painting house paint on a mural and you're just getting rid of the white of the wall. So I use the basic brush at 100% hardness, which is pressure sensitive to size. So I want that size to be pretty large, like it is. So I have to push pretty hard on the tablet to fill in that whole circle. Okay. Then I stay on the brush. It's at 100% opacity. And I hold down Option on my keyboard. It's the only thing I do with my left hand, to steal colors directly from my reference, right? But you'll see the colors range wildly. So I'm trying to find kind of average, flat colors. And I'm just going to start blocking in the basic shapes. Not even trying to get too accurate. And you'll be surprised by what these colors actually are sometimes, these shadow tones. And they change very minutely based on where you're selecting, right? But with this brush, I can fill it in pretty quickly. There's a good color. You don't want them to be too saturated, but they're all going to get kind of, this is just running behind. We're just trying to get rid of the whites. It's what I call the kill whitey phase, because it's nice and memorable. And it's very important in digital art. And why do you want to get rid of all that bright white? Well, because it limits the way you're able to see the color on the computer screen. Even right now, all these colors seem a lot darker than they really are because it's surrounded by bright white. So as soon as I'm done with this step, I'll be filling in the background with a middle gray, and that's going to be more helpful. This is also just a little bit of more refined sketching. And even that white in the nose is not really white. It's like a cream color, that little highlight. And so you're using these colors. Notice I'm never selecting black. I'm trying to find it from what's available. But you're using these, and they're fairly complicated colors, just to knock back a lot of this empty space. Don't be afraid of color. Don't be afraid of like some crazy colors. I'm probably going to introduce some crazy colors in my next steps today. Because this isn't just trying to match a photograph, though some digital painters like to do that. We're actually trying to make all the decisions ourselves and bring our own creativity to the process. Like Van Gogh painting a landscape, he doesn't try to just match exactly what he sees. He puts a lot of his own emotional interest into his composition. So we get to abstract and stylize, and that's what I think of as a caricature. Right from the way I transformed and distorted the sketch. The hardest portraits to do are people that you know and that you care about their opinion of you. Because how we recognize people, how we decide if a portrait of an animal is cute or not, it's all very subjective. So my advice is try to first keep yourself interested, and that will lead you to better decisions. Right. Some of you have subject matter that already has a lot of local color in it. And notice this is deviating from digital coloring pretty quickly, because basically the fur on this animal is all the same. But the lighting of the photo is very different. Very warm light here. Even the shadows are pretty warm. And if you want to, I'm not even going to do that yet. You could select whole color blocks and use the paint bucket and replace them. But honestly, at this stage, I think I just want you to fill it in yourself and get a feel for the brush. Now, the reason I need it to be pressure sensitive is because when I want to fill in large areas quickly, I push hard. But as I want to kind of refine the silhouette, and it's all about shape at this point, I don't want to be so direct. If you want to modify your color a little bit, you can always just use the foreground color selector there. And then what a lot of digital artists do, though I don't tend to do it, is you can paint little samples of colors you use a lot off to the side, and it becomes your palette, because you can always just steal directly from those. But I just tend to do it from my own work. So I'm going to be doing this for a little bit still, filling in the whites, and always kind of squinting and seeing what the light is doing, because I want to match the lighting, but I probably don't want the shadow to be quite so dark on mine. And I'm even looking at the negative shapes around so that I can get that kind of weird silhouette and puffiness even in my caricature. A lot of what I like about it is it looks kind of like an overweight juvenile deer. So that's my bias as I work on this caricature. Okay, so what's hard at this stage, the kill whitey phase, is I'm forcing myself not to get too detailed, not to try to finish anything off. I'm just trying to get rid of the white space. And I know some of you already, you're excited about digital painting, you've jumped right in, but you've already like kind of worked way more on some areas of the composition than others. You've left some areas completely blank, and you're starting to go into smaller brushes and more detail. And that's actually just going to end up making the whole thing take more time because you're going to have to fix it a lot more. So the key to digital painting, and this is true of traditional kind of acrylic painting as well, is to try to work the full surface all at once. And then you bring it up slowly, area by area. But you can't just ignore big parts of it because they don't interest you as much as other parts. For instance, there's a really big temptation that any artist feels to go in and start crafting the eye, make that look good, or the highlights on the ear, and make that look good. But really, if I do that and I kind of zoom in now, I'm just going to lose sight of everything else. My color choices aren't going to be right. It's just not going to be as strong as it could be. And we'll get to it, I promise. All right, almost done killing whitey here, but I still have some whites. And to equate it to traditional painting, this is the underpainting, especially in acrylic, which I think is the most similar to digital painting because it can be used opaquely like this, like oil, or it can be used transparently, which we'll be using later, like watercolor. But right now we're just doing 100% opacity, big, thick coverage strokes. They are not subtle. They are sharp. It's all or nothing. And it forces you to have some personality to it as you're making strong decisions. But they can always be painted over. All right. And remember, all these colors were stolen right from my reference. And then on some occasions modified using the color selector. Remember, if you're doing an animal, you have to do head to toe. So I'm going to need to, I can't just ignore these hooves. I'm going to have to deal with them eventually. I want to work through everything as much as I can. I'm also not painting white. So if you want to erase, you don't do it by painting white. You do it with the eraser, but I'm not even going to worry about that yet. There go the hooves. And as long as you think of it as a caricature, you're more likely to cut yourself some slack and have more fun with it, which is just a more pleasant way to learn. Okay, so that is my local color layer. And that's a little disingenuous because local color, if it was digital coloring, would just be one brown for the whole deer, right? So really this is my underpainting of flat color. Because they're all 100% opaque. And I'm trying to get rid of the white. So then I look for any little white specks And then those whites need to be painted. So I can steal the white and actually paint them in.